Hello everyone, how you doing? Welcome, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Meanwhile, I can introduce myself. I'm Sapo. I'm a PhD student at the University of Oxford. I'm currently based in the UK. If you're comfortable, feel free to type in the chat where you guys are from and why you're here. We have an exciting session for everyone today. Hi Rushi, welcome. Thank you. Hi everyone. Hi Tanu. Nice to see you. Feel free to say where you're from. So I'll say I'm from Thailand. I'm currently based in the UK. You're from India, based in Canada. Thank you, Nile. Welcome. In fact, Nile will be one of the speakers today. Hi, Muhammad from Libya. Great to see you. Hi, Sheikh. You're from India and studying Kyrgyzstan. Thank you for coming. Nice to see you. It's wonderful. We are seeing audience from all around the world, so that is very, very exciting. Hi, Bethany from Thailand. Welcome. Okay, it's 2:05 p.m. in the UK, probably 9:05 in Canada, sometime in the evening in Asia, like Thailand or Kyrgyzstan. So, thank you all again. I will briefly get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sapo. I'm a PhD student and Rhodes Scholar at the University of Oxford, and I'm really excited to be moderating today's Catalyst Dialogue series, Science with a Human Voice. Today's session is hosted by Clematis Research Empowerment Hub and We Kids United in partnership with Asian Medical Students Association International, the Pakistani International Medical Students Association, the Kazakhstan Medical Students Association, and the Libyan Medical Students Association, Tripoli. And we are truly grateful to all our partners for making this global conversation possible. This dialogue series was created with young students and early career researchers in mind, especially those navigating science, medicine, research, entrepreneurship, and leadership, while trying to figure out how their work can meaningfully serve our society. The goal of Catalyst Dialogues is exactly that. So it is to spark new ideas, honest reflections, and courageous leadership, and to remind us that science and research don't exist in isolation, and that it is shaped by people and their unique lived experience. And that's what we mean by science with a human voice. Behind every initiative and innovation is a human story. It is full of uncertainty, redirection, resilience, and hope. Today we are honored to hear from three remarkable speakers whose journeys span medicine, research, engineering, entrepreneurship, and service. So we will have three different speakers. So one of them is Nile Anderson, who is a Rhodes Scholar from Jamaica. He will share a powerful reflection on faith, science, and redirection, his journey in medicine and engineering, and what it looks like to lead with purpose while empowering young minds with STEM. We'll also hear from Dr. Wiktoria Milczyńska, who will explore the intersection of medicine and entrepreneurship, and what it means to become comfortable with uncertainty while building new solutions in healthcare. And then we'll also have Dr. Dhruv Darji, a Rhodes Scholar from the University of Oxford, who will share his journey navigating medical training and research from Zambia to England and his work in infectious disease and malaria prevention. And we hope to make this interactive, and so if you're comfortable, please feel free to speak up or type in the chat. So I encourage you to ask questions and stay with us for our session. So from various perspectives, like Dr. Milczynska's experience building in the HealthTech space as a medical doctor, to Nile's story of hope and redirection in medicine and engineering, to Dr. Darji's perspective on global health and medical training, each talk offers a very unique voice of what one can do to make a difference to our society. My sincere apologies. We were supposed to start with Dr. Dhruv, but he's having internet issues. But luckily, we have three speakers for today's session. Even though we were supposed to start with Dr. Dhruv, he's currently having a lot of internet issues. And so, since Now is here, would you be ready to show up on camera and then maybe come on screen? So his talk was supposed to be a bit later in the day, but yeah, I was just texting him and he kindly said he's happy to do it now. So before we get started, it's so excited to see Now today, as you can see on his screen and here also on the slide. So before we formally start with our first session of the day, let me formally introduce who Now is. So Now is a Rhodes Scholar from Jamaica. If you don't know, Rhodes Scholarship is the world's oldest and one of the most prestigious international postgraduate scholarship, funding talented young leaders from around the globe to study any subject at the University of Oxford or at Oxford. Notable Rhodes Scholars alum include Howard Florey, Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine in 1945 for his work isolating and purifying penicillin. They also include heads of states, including 3 prime ministers of Australia, Mr. Wasim Sajjad, President of Pakistan, and many more. And now himself is a Rhodes Scholar from Jamaica with a deep commitment to empowering young minds in STEM and serving his community through faith-driven leadership. Now completed a master's in artificial intelligence, where his research focused on enhancing trajectory prediction models with formal uncertainty, which guarantees for safety critical applications. He's now going to join the Computational Health Informatics Lab at the University of Oxford as a software engineer, working at the intersection of AI, healthcare, and engineering to develop systems that integrate wearable technology, mobile apps, and machine learning for real-time decision support. His journey actually began in an MBBS program before pivoting to his true passion, engineering, underscoring that there are different pathways to contribute meaningfully to healthcare. His excellence in service and academics has been recognized nationally and regionally. He is a recipient of both the Governor General's Achievement Award and the Prime Minister's National Youth Award for Academics, Jamaica's premier honors for youth achievement. And in the Commonwealth Year of the Youth, he was named among the 35 under 35 in the Caribbean by the Caribbean Regional Youth Council. A committed Christian now seeks to demonstrate that faith and science need not be in contention, viewing scientific inquiry as a way to explore and steward God's creation. So looking ahead, now hopes to contribute to the development of human-enhancing robotics and in assistive technologies, creating solutions that restore and improve human ability. So please join me, everyone, in giving him a huge round of Zoom reaction applause for now, if you can. So now, please go ahead. And I know some of you were very excited about Dr. Dhruv Darji. I really apologize on his behalf. He really, really wanted to come at this point in time. But when and if he has internet connections back, I'll let the session know, and he might be giving a talk towards the end. But for now, let's please all welcome Nile Anderson. Yeah, feel free to take it from here.
All right. Hi guys. So it's an absolute honor to be here. When Sapal had asked me to be here, I was so excited. I was like, all right, I'm ready to present. I honestly was scared because I was like, how am I going to crunch down all of that story in just this time lot and make it very clear as to just how much these things intersect for me? And I mean, so you guys got a part of the story. I tried to share my screen.
And just to let everyone know, now literally I just texted him like a few minutes ago while I was presenting to ask him to present first. So I'm really putting now on the spot. And thank you so much, man, for coming to this talk. Exciting.
Yeah, it's an honor. Let me go ahead and share screen, and then you guys can confirm for me whether or not you are seeing it. So, I mean, I was asked to give a title for this talk, and so I just tried my best to give a cool title. I'm not sure if I'm able to capture again just the essence of everything that happened and just how that has shaped my trajectory in my career, but it's the best job I could do at the time. And so I've called my presentation The Blueprint of Hope, a story of faith, science, and redirection. So, Nile. So just to give you an idea of what I'll be sharing, you guys heard a bit about who I was from Sapal just now. And so today I'll be sharing just a bit about my time in medicine, my pivot to engineering, how I discovered faith, and the impact that has had on me. So with that said, I am from Jamaica. I don't know what you guys may know Jamaica for. I don't know if you want to like drop it in the chat, what you know Jamaica for. What is the most prominent thing that comes to mind when you think Jamaica? So I think just maybe people may be thinking of this guy, Usain Bolt. So Usain Bolt is one of the fastest men in the world. And so like Jamaica is really well known for that. And I think it gives an image as to what it's like in Jamaica, in that it's a third world country and opportunities are hard to come by. And in order to really stand out or in order to achieve anything, you have to be a standout. And doing that requires lots and lots of hard work. So Usain Bolt is a perfect example of that, just how much he's worked physically, conditioned his body to become one of the fastest men in the world. I wish I could say he was my cousin, but unfortunately the island is not that small. And then even me, myself, I would have been inspired because of the economic state of my country to really work hard to seize opportunities. So just as an example, this is an article of when I decided that normally people do 8 subjects at it's almost like the equivalent to GCE O levels. And I decided to take on 19 just because I was really trying at getting a scholarship in order to pursue my tertiary studies. So this is just to give you an idea of the kind of background I was coming from. And this was the road leading up to medicine. This was the road leading up to medicine. It was like the grand goal of everyone in Jamaica that, hey, we want to study MBBS, we want to do medicine, and this is the direction, this is the best direction that we know that we can go in order to make a big impact in this country or anywhere else. And so from there, I got into medicine. Yay! Celebrate. Celebrate. But it didn't quite feel right. I remember studying with friends, with colleagues, and though some things did interest me, neuroscience, I'll speak a bit more on that later on. It just felt like overarching what I was doing was just not quite the fit. It felt like there was just something that was extremely and oddly off. In fact, I struggled with depression and just the idea that this existence at the time was totally empty and I had no idea what my purpose was. So here I was, I managed to get into this program that almost everyone that did sciences in my country, this was like the pinnacle of what they desired to get into medicine. And I told people that, hey, I don't really feel like complete. And they were like, how could you? You're in one of the best programs that we could ever get into and that everyone desires to get into. It's like super competitive. Why are you not grateful for that? And it wasn't that I wasn't grateful. It just, again, was not the fit. And so I made a very, very radical decision. Very radical. Very, very radical decision. I decided to pivot into engineering. Now, that itself was hard because it took some convincing of some people, which were not totally convinced at the time, including my mom, saying, hey, I know you guys had big hopes for me to do medicine, and I know you guys had big hopes that I would achieve something great in the field of medicine or be one of the best medical doctors ever, but it just did not feel like me. And what does feel like me is things along the line of electronics, electrical things, doing equations, maths, and physics. Like that was what called me, and I decided to pivot there. So after a long summer, including actually sleeping on school benches on the outside at nights while I was at the library, trying to find scholarship opportunities and trying to just find the way that I would get into my love of electronics engineering. I finally got into electronics. And of course, my relationship status became electrical engineering, as you see there. I was totally committed. I remember at the time just trying to prove that, hey, this was indeed my place and this is where I belonged and where I was supposed to be. I managed to get near like a straight A plus for my first semester of engineering. And it was great for a while. After a while being in engineering, it kind of felt like, yeah, I am where I want to be. This is where my passions do point, and I am very, very much desirous to be here, much more than I was desirous to be in medicine. But something still felt off. Something felt empty. And so literally you see the slide repeated, but instead of medicine, it's just engineering. So yeah, I got into engineering, but it didn't quite feel right. I felt empty of purpose still and struggled with depression and anxiety and not knowing, no, obviously, if this were supposed to be my place in the world, what truly is my place in the world? And I struggled with the thoughts, and obviously I couldn't tell anyone this because then it's like, oh, but you said this entire time that all you needed to do was to get into your love of engineering and everything would be fine and you'd be making the impact in science that you wanted to make. And so it was hard. I couldn't tell anyone that I was struggling with these feelings. And I remember just after having a long bout and season of anxiety and depression and wondering really what's next, I remember one of my friends invited me to church. Yes, that is correct. It may sound strange to a lot of you. I know there's a diverse amount of countries here. And for me at the time as well, it was something I was just doing just because. And I never imagined that it would really impact me in the way that it eventually did. In fact, I came to the realization that what was happening was I was chasing after the things of this world and not after a relationship with a God, a father who loved me. And there's a very popular story that was told by Jesus Christ. So yes, very much a real historical figure who walked the earth, and he told many stories that claim to have revealed like wonders and secrets of the kingdom of heaven, his kingdom that he reigned in. And one of the stories that he told was the story of the prodigal son. Now, this is a very popular reference that a lot of you guys maybe get or have heard before, the story of the prodigal son, just how you've gone out into this world and or just wherever, and you did all sorts of things, realizing, you finally want to return to where you belong. And indeed, that is where you belong. So just to give an idea, though, of the story, I have it here just to read, to give an idea and show you like how I personally relate to it. And just maybe there's someone here that also relates to it. So the story of the prodigal son. So Jesus continued, there was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of the country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one would give him anything. And when he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Yes. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him, What was going on? Your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has had him back safe and sound. The older brother became angry and refused to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we have to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Now, my takeaway from this, again, the story is of a son that drifts away from his father's love, right? And he thinks pursuing everything else of this world will give him purpose, will give him a sense of belonging or just value. And for me, it's very much the same, where I was chasing all these things. I was working hard. I became one of the best I could in my country. So for me, I was chasing all the things of this world. I was chasing academic accolades. I was chasing after just all the achievements that I could, just for the end goal at the time of, all right, I'll get into engineering. And then when I reached there, it was like, I don't feel anything here. And so I'm so happy that I personally got the opportunity to return to my father. I I became a Christian 2.5 years ago, and it has been a wondrous time. I've come to know that there is a God. There is a God who loves me, and that God gives me my purpose, that God gives me the science that I study. This natural world is made by Him, right? That's literally how I view things. This natural world is made by Him. And it's through what He's created, my study of what He's created, that gives me a purpose in science in the first place. And I found so much more purpose. I found so much more fulfillment. And I found, most importantly, peace from that. So for me, again, I was chasing after the things of this world, just as this other son was. But I've returned, I found my father, and he lovingly accepted me. He's given me peace. He's given me so much other gifts. Since really coming to know the Lord Jesus as my personal Savior and my peace, I found peace and so many more blessings. So right now, as it was mentioned earlier, it was after coming to know the Lord that I managed to find the clarity of mind and sense of purpose enough to actually pursue the Rhodes Scholarship. Literally, I'm not lying, it's literally after that season of coming to know the Lord. And in the same season, I got the Rhodes Scholarship. There were many other blessings that followed as well. I eventually went to Oxford Brookes University, pursued an MSc in AI, and just going about seeing how I could make my impact in this world, but from a different perspective. And now I work at the IBME, the Institute of Biomedical Engineering, which is one of the foremost biomedical engineering institutes in the whole world, based at the University of Oxford, as a software engineer, working on an impactful project about health monitoring and the prediction of health events. And I'll be working in a hospital with that. So it's funny, life has come full circle. I was running from the hospital and I ended up back in the working in the hospital, but from a different angle. And also just many other things that have come along the way. As Sapol mentioned, I was awarded by my prime minister in Jamaica as one of the top scholars in Jamaica, one of the top academics in Jamaica, and just the impact I've made in STEM and being honored as top 35 under 35 Caribbean. And it's funny because all of these things, they are secondary in my purpose. The thing that's very much primary is my faith. It's my faith that keeps me grounded. It's my faith that keeps me driven. It's my faith through which I think I have a purpose to pursue in science. There's no science without me. And I mean, in the words of Paul the Apostle, and just to give you context, Paul the Apostle, in the Christian account, he's someone that literally pursued or persecuted Christians before. He literally didn't believe what these Christians believed. They didn't believe in Christ. And he came to believe in Christ, the same person who was persecuting Christians. And he said, "What is more, I consider everything a loss because of the surpassing worth of knowing Christ Jesus, my Lord, for whose sake I have lost all things. I consider them garbage that I may gain Christ." And maybe those words don't resonate with you, but I'm assuming there's a lot of natural scientists in here. That's why you're here. You're looking into science, you're looking into research. And other than the words of Nile, here are the words of Werner Heisenberg. And just in case you don't know who that is, he's one of the physics godfathers, if I may. He invented the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, or he discovered the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which says basically you can't determine the momentum and the velocity of a particle at the same time. I may be getting that just a bit wrong, but if you can look back at the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, very important principle that has shaped the whole face of physics, right? And here it is that he says, right, the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. And he's not the only one. He's not alone in being a scientist that is driven by his faith. Literally, we can talk about Isaac Newton. Do you know about Isaac Newton? Inventor or discoverer of calculus, whatever the correct technical term is, and also many other scientific concepts. That's way back then. We talk about even, so Einstein wasn't a Christian per se, but Einstein knew and felt there was definitely something higher than him. And all these scientists, even to today, we have the legendary John Lennox, who is a famous mathematician at the University of Oxford. And all of these people are very much driven by their faith. There's something to them about the natural world that is only really worth studying if it's beyond our abilities to create it, is beyond our current comprehension. And so there's more to discover because there's a person who is more that has made these things. And that's why there'll always be more to discover in science. And that's why you'll always have a place in science. That's why you'll always have a place in research. There'll always be more to discover because right now, the way this universe is made by the one creator, as I see it, as Werner Heisenberg sees it, is full of mysteries, full of wonder. And maybe at first, when you begin to study these things, you start to say, okay, I can explain everything. And so there's no need for a God in the scheme of things. But the more you study, the more you realize that you don't know, and the more you realize that there are things to discover. And I think that's the beauty of it, that indeed God has given us a world governed by his natural laws, that he indeed allows us to discover more and more of each time. And I think it's so beautiful that if we look deep enough to these things, as Werner Heisenberg puts it, we'll discover that he is there as the grand architect, as the grand scientist, the one who has made all these things. And that is my worldview. It is what drives my science. It is what drives my desire to discover more, because I know for a fact that there is more to discover. If there was no greater God than I, if the world was just by random chance, then that's it. There isn't really much interesting to be discovered in this world. But I think it's because there is a creator that is so much greater than us, that there is a lot to discover in this world. And so, with that said, right now, my journey, I'm pivoting. I'm pivoting. It's interesting. I started in medicine. I ran from medicine. And then I ended up in electronics engineering. But now life has become full circle, because the kind of robotics that I want to work on is literally assistive technologies and wearable robotics. In other words, things that can be used to restore medical patients who are amputees, or just, well, yeah, have lost function in some shape or form, by actually being able to create interfaces with their current biological systems and the robotics that we have of today. And so the interlink between that is AI. And so right now, where I'm working is close to the field of intersection between all those things. I'm working again in the IBNE as a software engineer. And one of the projects we're working on is basically a wearables project where we monitor patient vitals. And from the patient vitals, we're not only able to predict or tell what the current patient state is, but also through machine learning algorithms, the hope is that eventually we'll be able to also predict possible adverse events for patients, and therefore we'll be able to act preemptively for patients, or even just respond fast enough to whatever adverse event may be happening with a patient. And then this, of course, could revolutionize the entire medical sector. And so I'm really happy to be a part of this project. It's really funny. I remember proposing a similar project. It was just a pipe dream at the time, when I was a part of a different program. And here it is that I am currently at the IBNE, literally working on a dream project. And that is where my career is at now. However, I wanted to really leave the space, that if you guys had questions or just anything you want to ask about my trajectory, maybe you have a similar trajectory, maybe you're wondering, is medicine for you? Is faith for you? Does any of this appeal to you? Do you have any questions along this line?
Yes, feel free to get in touch with Now through LinkedIn, Instagram, email, and other contacts. Thank you so much, Now, for this very inspiring talk. I've learned a lot about how faith could interact with science, and I really like the Heisenberg quote. So, in the audience, if you have any questions and you feel comfortable typing in the chat, or even coming out on the mic, that would be excellent. So, Aditya Vasudevan. So, Aditya asked, how were you able to find the confidence to switch from one course of study to another? Now, go ahead.
Cool. All right. So that's a good question, Alisa. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that it was completely a confident decision before, because when you're in a society where there are certain careers that are valued over some, and honestly, one of the pressures is, my mom. You guys know how that is. My mom wants me to do it, and so like I don't want to disappoint her, just out of the fact that I love her. That's the fact that I want to honor her, and that's the fact also that she's possibly the one that's going to have to support me whatever decision I make. But um, so it made it difficult, and it was a long season before deciding to do it. I'd admit I spent 2.5 years in medicine before making the switch, and this entire time I knew it wasn't the trajectory for me. And I remember particularly finally coming to that point on the ward where I just totally broke down. I'm like, this is not for me, and I really desire to do what I want to do in electronics engineering. And I remember starting by talking to a few people that were really supportive, and I think that was super helpful. Just having that support in your corner, that well-grounded people. I spoke to my scholarship coordinator, and I was like, "Hey, I'm not feeling this anymore. It's really difficult. I'm having a challenge. I don't feel fulfilled here." And I spoke to her. She was like very supportive, and she's saying, "All right, you should start by speaking to your faculty and your mom." And I went to the faculty and I told them that, "Hey, I'm thinking of switching." And they gave very good advice. They even called my mom in, and they had a good conversation with her, just explaining that, hey, some people just aren't made for this. I'm assuming that's somehow something like what the conversation was. I wasn't the entire conversation, but I think it was very important to have that support in my corner, and um, had a few talks, had a few conversations, talked through it, also thought through it as well. It wasn't just something that I did impulsively. I want to emphasize that I didn't just get up and say, "All right, switching career now." It was really something that was thought of for a very, very long time, and then I was decided. I was like, I'm going to do this no matter how difficult it is, and it was difficult. Again, literally having nights where I slept on benches at my university. Had supportive friends also though that from time to time they'd allow me into their dormitories to just get a shower, get a meal, and just continue back on the scholarship search. So it was difficult, and at times I really felt like this isn't going to work out at all. But it's funny. I can see clearly now, or more clearly now, that God had designed me for a purpose, and it was going in line with that design that I so strongly desired this, and I just knew that it was the fit for me. It wasn't so clear then, but I just knew it was like I want to get into this. I want to do maths and physics, and I think the key things there was my I had a passion. I had a strong passion for it, and I also had people that saw that passion, that saw that how I was designed. I was really designed for these things, and so having that support as well externally was really helpful. And eventually, that's what really helped to get me through. Um, I wouldn't tell you it was easy. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you it wasn't easy. If you're thinking about one, or if you know somebody that is, then I'm happy to be one of those first persons, one of those first points of contact to really talk it through. Like, is this career direction switch the one for me? Should I pursue it? Does it make sense? And maybe what are the next steps? So I'm happy to advise because that was super helpful for me at the time. Yeah.
Excellent. Any questions? Or there's one in the chat. For a person who wants to do medicine, what do you think they should know? Any specific things you wish you knew before starting medicine, which might have made you complete the course or made it easier in any way?
Right. I would say again, it's very similar to the answer I had earlier that um I feel like each of us, like, we're designed in a particular way. Again, I tell you guys, like, I truly believe that God has designed us for a particular thing. And I believe that, right, I believe that in that design, like, it's either you're designed for medicine or you're not. I mean, people have made it true, but I remember there are many stories that I had that really confirmed for me that medicine was not the direction. I remember one of my friends in medicine at the time telling me about a consultant that she was speaking to, and he was just so sad. He was like, "Guys, if you don't think this is for you, leave now." Leave now. It doesn't make sense to waste all your life. Now, medicine is a thing like this. It takes a lot of commitment, not just in study, but in the career itself. You're gonna have to spend grueling hours, right? And don't think a lot of people make it sound fancy. At least it's not in Jamaica in terms of there's possibly a high income. But honestly, when you check out the income of a medical doctor, if that's all you're going for, it's not worth it. Leave it alone. Um, a lot of my classmates that wanted to do medicine or that maintained that trajectory, they were very much driven. They had a passion that, hey, they wanted to help people, but not only that they wanted to help people, this is how they wanted to help people. It was very much clear to them. And they knew that from the get-go, from their first year of coming into the medicine program, saying, this is what I want to do, cardiothoracic surgeon, general practitioner. They had a sense of direction. And I believe that's really formed and shaped by a lot of your past interest, who you are, and just your alignment and passions and skill sets. I believe that naturally aligns and you'll feel that alignment. There are a lot of people that, again, they're pursuing it so hard because it's a field that a lot of people do desire to pursue. They're pursuing it so hard that they don't stop and reflect and really think upon, is this the field for me? Is there another place where my skill sets align? Is there possibly another way that I can make an impact in the medical field that is not actually being a medical doctor? And the answer to that is, like, there are many trajectories. Again, like, I'm here now, I'm going to be visiting the JR to be checking out this new technology I'll be working on. The JR is the John Radcliffe Hospital. So it's one of the main hospitals in Oxford. So that ought to be a very interesting experience. That I ran as far as I could from the hospital, but here I am again, but just in a different capacity. And I think a lot of people, what they don't realize is just the capacity or the realm of things that exist out there. So, for example, Sapul as well. So Sapul, he's not necessarily pursuing a career as a medical doctor, right? But he's doing research that's going to be very much highly impactful in this field, right? And so, I mean, I guess we even are introducing you to the idea of science and research and the world that exists out there, and showing you that even this, aside from being a medical doctor, research is definitely a very viable field where you can make an impact in medicine, where you can actually help people. What you do, your outcomes can actually change the quality of life for somebody, very much so. And you can see that very much clearly. So I'd say to that person to explore, to reflect, think about who you are, what your passions truly are, if that truly aligns with medicine, if you see yourself working these grueling hours and still being satisfied, right? Or is it just for the money? It's never, ever going to be worth it. I promise you that.
Okay, thank you so much for that very detailed answer. Yeah, I hope it helps. So we have another question. As someone committed to empowering young minds in STEM based on the introduction, what kind of leadership do you think the next generation needs most right now? Any advice for someone who is interested in education? I assume the question refers to like if they were to make a difference in education and inspiring young students in STEM, what would you do?
Hmm. Okay, let me think. Let me think upon that. I'm also rereading it to ensure I've caught all the elements. As someone committed to empowering young minds and STEM. Yeah. So I think the future of this leadership is definitely, again, like as I've been pointing to, consultative. I feel like what Sapol is doing here at the Matis, for example, is great because there's a realm of things that he's introducing you guys to and other young people to that I, for one, wouldn't have been introduced to in Jamaica. I wouldn't have known that there's this whole domain of even research, for example. I thought, okay, I did this subjects in natural sciences, in biochemistry, math, and I thought, okay, whatever career that I do is just going to be me some way applying that. But that didn't look very clear. And so one wonderful way, I'm a part of something called the STEM ambassadors in my country, STEM ambassadors in Jamaica. And one of the key things that I see us doing and highly impactful is actually introducing students from an early age to the different careers that exist out there. So not just a gloss over it and say, all right, you can be a doctor, you can be a medical physicist, you can be a physicist. And what does this mean? It's literally going and having these conversations about these are the things that I do, even having like some demonstrations, showing them this is the kind of things I do. I fix radiology machines, for example, as a medical physicist. I fix radiology machines or I calibrate them. Um, and these are the kind of subjects that I need to know or the kind of subjects that interested me before. And I think having these conversations, setting up these discussions, setting up these forums, as Sapol is doing right now, is very much the key to that. To actually have people have the chance to be able to talk a bit more about what their career interests are, why it interests them, and what the possible direction is that they can go from there. So I think it's definitely very consultative and having open discussions very much like this one.
Thank you so much for that answer. Feel free to put more questions. We have 10 more minutes for now. And I have one question for you. So you have spoken a lot about, fate giving you a renewed sense of hope. But were there any moments when fate was kind of tested rather than comforting and whether you navigated those? And has fate always been a place where you receive comfort?
Okay, right. So I mean, so to answer all of that. So firstly, was it always a place? Let me answer that first. Was it always a place where I received comfort? No, it was not always a place I received comfort. Because before the gospel of Christ had been made clear to me in my faith, before I realized that, oh, indeed, like, yes, the truth is we're sinners. I sin. I do wrong things. I lie, or yeah, just things that are bad. And I realized in myself that these things are bad. And so, like, there was a point at which all I could feel was guilt for all those things that I did wrong, and that was not helpful. That was not helpful at all. But then, in coming to like a full understanding of the gospel, I realized that, oh, even though I do these wrong things, right? From my understanding, Christ, the man Christ has come. He's died so that I could be freed from the burden of those things, and I could have a new life, new relationship with Him, and be freed from that burden. So He didn't come to give us the world gives. The world gives. just troubles, but he's come to give me peace. And that's the peace I found even in difficult circumstances. So before I had a full understanding of my faith, it was more so burdensome, like thinking, okay, I'm doing all these wrong things, and oh, does that just mean I go to hell? Ah, and it was hard. But again, realizing and coming to a full understanding, reading the Bible more, and understanding that hey, really and truly, He didn't come to give me discomfort with these things or a burden, but to actually give me peace. The world is already very much burdensome, but He's come to give me peace. And so my faith in Christ has given me that peace. And yes, there have been very much trying times, very much trying times. I remember just this year, for example, just facing many difficulties. I mean, so one of them is the hurricane. I don't know if you guys heard about that happening in Jamaica, but like that basically wiped out half of where I live. And many people are now like homeless and just no, it's not the best picture right now. And I remember watching a video recently and a young lady saying in this time, or being asked in this time, what is it that she holds on to? And she said it's faith. So I I'm there wondering and I'm saying, oh Lord, like how could something so bad happen? And the reality is the world is the way it is, and a lot of that is the product of the wrong things we've done. So for example, people theorize that the hurricane um has intensified, or hurricanes are intensifying because of global warming. If you're, I don't know if you're like a Trumpite and maybe don't believe in global warming, it's not a real thing. But whether you do or not, there's science to back this. And so we did indeed experience a more intense hurricane. And of course, that again is a result of our own bad stewardship of the earth and not taking care of the earth as we should. And so we saw the consequence of that. And however, even in those difficult times, no matter the challenges we face, whatever their origin, like there's always that to hold on to. For me, there's a greater hope that one day this will all be done with, like this imperfect world will be done with. I'll be in heaven with my Lord. Um, that's the hope I hold on to, that there's something greater to come. I mean, I feel sorry for people that if the only thing, to be honest, if the only thing is what we experience on this world, and there can be good things, but if the only thing we experience on this world are the things we experience on this world is all you have to look forward to, then that's not a very, very, very satisfying experience at all. But again, just as in science, I know there's more to discover, there's more to look forward to. Very much likewise in my faith, I know that there's more to look forward to with my relationship with the Lord. I'll get to be in heaven with Him. And yeah, I'll get to be with Jesus where there'll be no more tears, no more crying. And I hold on to that hope even in difficult times, just saying, this won't be forever. And what I will have forever is peace with Jesus Christ. And that has very much driven me and helped me, even in the trying times.
Great, we are approaching time. We have one more question from Bethany. So the question is, how did you manage the tension between external expectation and your inner sense of calling?
Mm.
I
A
think that's a
very good
great
question.
question because you have talked about how in Jamaica there's a sense of expectation of what you should be doing in your career, and you sort of have gone there, but then taken a different path. And even then, like I'm sure there's always this tension. So that's an excellent question. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I mean, again, like I promise you, it was difficult. I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you it was not difficult. And yeah, that did exist. That very much tension between, all right, everyone else is saying, hey, you're in medicine, it's great to be in medicine, and it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Use that opportunity to the best of your ability. And I'm trying to do this. I'm even trying to possibly go the route of one of my other friends. So this is another route to consider, like to actually finish medicine and then do a further degree in biomedical engineering, which is very much a possibility. But again, for me, this still did not feel very natural. And I eventually made the decision that, hey, I really don't feel called to this. And I think even though there are external expectations, there are external hopes on your life, even though you feel very much differently internally called, I feel the message is this, that with that internal calling, when God has put an internal calling on your life, if you follow through with that, then everything will begin to fall in place. Let me give a perfect example of that. My mom, my mom was one of the biggest external pressures during that time. Um, she didn't see me doing anything but medicine. It was like the profession of prestige. Not saying that's what drove her per se, but it was hard for her to see me doing anything but medicine. And I remember us having like a very strained relationship at the time while I was trying to go through that transition when I decided that, hey, that indeed electronics engineering is my direction and that's what I'm going to pursue. I'm dropping medicine. We had tensions. Literally, she would not talk to me for a bit. But again, eventually over time, with this internal calling, again, it was very much natural that I started to excel in this field. And it was very clear now to even those who were pressuring me on the outside and just the expectations on the outside, it was clear to them now that indeed this internal calling indeed was what my interests, my skill sets indeed aligned with. And this was indeed producing a better result than when I was there. So I think that the proof of the cake is in the eating, I think they say. And so deciding to just follow through with our calling internally, how it was called, I think that just demonstrated in itself that, hey, indeed, this is very much a much more valid route than the route that many others would expect.
Thank you. That was excellent. Does anyone has any more questions? I
Which
have
one
one. Sorry, did you say something?
No, go ahead. I was saying I just probably put this back up in the meanwhile in case anybody else wants to connect.
Yes. Okay, and one last question now is, you are an engineer and you're interested in healthcare. How do you see medical doctors collaborating with you? And like as an engineer, like how do you see other stakeholders in the healthcare actually working with you to make a difference? And after this question, we'll go to the next speaker.
All right, cool. So that's a very good question. And I think, to be honest, I could give an answer to that now, and I will. But I think it's going to be much clearer in this current role that I have, how that looks in practice. So I'll be working with clinicians particularly. So my visit to the John Radcliffe Hospital, for example, will look like me, and maybe this is giving a picture, will look like me visiting the clinicians, them demonstrating to me, all right, this is a system that we have in place right now. This is what it does. This is how it helps us currently, but this is also how we think it can further help us. So I think it's having that conversation with them about, all right, what are the challenges that they're facing, then actually going and experiencing it alongside them and saying, all right, this then is how I can meet my engineering skills with what your needs are. So I think that's the general engineering approach. It's like understanding the problem a bit more and understanding the problem not just from your own perspective, but from those who are facing the problem. So the clinicians, and also even in a lot of the cases, the patients themselves saying, all right, this is the difficulty I have with this particular technology right now. It's helpful in this way, but sometimes, so for example, like a prosthetic limb design, maybe the patient begins to feel uncomfortable after 1 hour, even though it's helpful. And so I think it's hearing all the voices that are involved in the problem. And then I think that begins to shape the pathway to a possible solution. So I think it's hearing those voices.
Thank you now. Everyone, please give him a round of Zoom reaction applauses or maybe in the chat just to let Now know that you appreciate his talk and his time. So I'm going to put a clap. Thank you again. So now we will welcome our next speaker, Dr. Wiktoria Milczyńska. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. So thank you so much for being here. And it means a lot to me and to everyone here in the audience and also those who will be watching the recording later on. Victoria, where are you currently based at? It's great to see
So I'm
you.
actually currently in Dubai, and thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. Really honored.
That's so wonderful. You're in Dubai. So why don't I formally introduce you, Victoria, and then you can get started? Would you be sharing your screen as well today or?
Yeah, I
Okay,
will, yeah.
wonderful. Okay, so as we heard from Now, he navigated through his MBBS and then did engineering and a bunch of pivoting around the way. And then he said he'll be joining a health lab at University of Oxford. So you heard his perspective of what it's like to transition from medicine to engineering. But now we'll be joined by Dr. Victoria, who is a medical doctor and early stage health tech founder based in Dubai. Trained at King's College London and Imperial College London at United Kingdom, she has worked across multiple NHS specialties and has a strong track record in clinical innovation, leadership, and research. She's part of the Antler MENAP cohort, where she's exploring and developing new technology-driven opportunities for the GCC. Victoria has also published peer-reviewed research, spoken at international events, and remains committed to mentoring and contributing to the region's growing innovation system. So thank you, Victoria, for being here today. I personally really look forward to hearing your perspective. And so go ahead.
Amazing. Thank you so much for the introduction and lovely to meet everyone. So Sapolna,
Yes.
Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Okay, perfect. As Sapolna has mentioned, I'll be talking about navigating my own career journey from medicine to now entrepreneurship. And the topic of today's talk is navigating uncertainty, building a career without a linear map, which is a topic that's really close to my heart. I hope that it offers some useful advice to those who may be considering paths outside of medicine or outside of traditional career fields. And I will leave some time as well for questions. So please feel free to have a think if there's anything that particularly interests you. I would love to share my insights. So a bit about myself. So I am a medical doctor by background, previously graduated from Imperial College London and King's College London. I have experience across medicine, strategy consulting, specifically within healthcare, working on like M&A deals, due diligence, as well as clinical research, where I worked within medicine, published papers in peer-reviewed journals, and then also startups, so done internships and like different form of ad hoc work. Currently, I am part of Antler MENA cohort, which for the autumn of this year is based in Riyadh. So Antler has two cohorts, Dubai and Riyadh, one for spring, one for autumn. And now I'm building a startup in the GCC, which actually is in stealth mode. So I probably won't be able to share much, but work in progress. So my career has not taken a traditional path. I mean, most doctors, once you get into medical school, you will be expected to continue down that same pathway, finish medicine, specialize, publish papers, and work in the same field. This was actually my path initially, and that's something I'll talk about. But I would love to talk about the way I actually got to this decision because I do recognize I took some very untraditional steps here. So my journey actually started in Poland, where I'm originally from. I grew up in a tiny village outside of Warsaw, and that's where I spent my early years in terms of schooling. I then realized probably when I was like 13, 14, that I would love to study abroad and have this international perspective, broaden my horizons. And that's when I really pushed myself to actually start working hard and had a goal in sight. This then prompted me to apply to more specific high schools. I got into one of the top high schools in Poland, did IB, International Baccalaureate, and decided somewhere along the way that I want to become a doctor. I wanted to, help people. It's a great career. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. And despite everyone telling me it's going to be impossible, because typically there are not many spaces for international students, I still applied, got in, and that led me to the next part of my journey, which is coming to the UK. So I trained in London, went to King's and Imperial, and all was great. I did love medicine. As I mentioned earlier, I did the clinical research, the actual clinical attachments, and then eventually actually became a doctor. So I worked in Northwest London for several years, across multiple specialties, surgical specialties, medical specialties, A&E, you name it. It was a great journey. I did love it, but there were things along the way that I will speak about that actually made me think perhaps this is not the right pathway. And I did end up leaving this route. So my aha moment, what I was called, is I did realize during the journey that, of course, this is a great career and you can help people, and it's very satisfying. There are many options in medicine, and I would still suggest it to anyone who wants to do medicine, but ultimately it's not for everyone. And I did realize probably somewhere halfway through the medical school that there was something that's missing. And looking back then I wasn't able to tell exactly what was missing just yet. It's something that I only realized much later, which was actually the impact I was seeking. And as cliche as it sounds, I realized that as doctors, we only have two hands, which of course is great. You can, help patients one at a time, but I was seeking this larger scale impact, which In medicine, it's very difficult to have unless you go into like public health, at which point it's a very different form of an impact. And that's something I probably retrospectively was not able to have when I was applying to medical school at the age of 17. So this led me to a question, should I stay or should I really leave? It is not an easy decision, and actually it was very tough for me to decide. And I spent a long time deciding. Despite realizing probably halfway through medical school that perhaps there's something that's not really what I'm looking for, I did continue. I wanted to give it a fair chance.
Okay.
So I did end up completing my medical school training and then becoming a doctor. And this leads to something that I think is really important. And this can be true for a lot of professions, but it's particularly true for doctors. And it's just something to be aware of, which is a sunk cost fallacy. So one of the reasons, and something that I have been told by all of my mentors, is, you've spent so long training to become a doctor. Why would you leave after, putting in all this effort, all this hard work? And then when you start working, it's not just like actual learning, but also thinking about the night shifts that you've done, the sacrifices that you have made in terms of the family life, and like seeing your friends, missing all sorts of important events. Like, I mean, I didn't personally miss any weddings or birthdays, but people did. And it's something that, you will have to consider as a doctor because it will happen. So it is, unfortunately, it's something to consider. And that's something that really played in my head for a long time because I wasn't sure if I'm actually making a rash decision, which is why I actually worked as a doctor for a few years. To really make sure that I'm not making a wrong decision, and I wasn't, which brings me back to actually my journey. So actually, despite becoming a doctor, I did end up leaving, which brings me to what I did now, which is coming to the Middle East, so specifically Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, with Antler. And there was an Antler logo, but it's now not showing. There we go. Why Middle East? There are many reasons. I have got family in the region in Dubai, but also in terms of my personal long-term goals, it did feel like the right place to build a company. A lot of people have asked me why I wouldn't do it in the UK. Nothing against London. I think it's a great place. I think the UK is a great place. And there are many great places you can build a company, but there's no point in building a company in a different country to the country you will be living in. And it didn't feel right. I don't think that's the right decision to start building in London and then move, hence coming to the region. The problem with making that sort of a decision, it is a challenging choice. And as you can see from my journey so far, this is not a traditional pathway. And actually thinking about your own career, it's very challenging to sometimes be able to really track those dots together and be able to connect them at the time. In traditional career pathways, the success is quite linear. So you know where you are at point A, you want to get to point B, you end up, taking all of those steps that are required. But actually, quite often when we backtrack the dots, it may look like they're part of a picture on the right. It's not necessarily a straight line, and that's all right. And that's something that I personally learned myself. So looking back, this brings me to something that I think is really important, and that's something that I personally used when I was trying to figure out my own career steps and how actually to navigate that kind of uncertainty and really decide what's best for me long term, which will be a theory that I will touch upon in a second, but I would just start with this. So looking at the careers and like all life choices, really, there are different ways in which we can really plan our paths. We can have a very specific plan of where we want to get to and really just go in a straight line and kind of like a tunnel vision, doing everything that's possible to get to point B. But also you can take this untraditional pathway, which is more so the squiggly line. So you can think about where you are now, what kind of ideas you have, how to plan from there, and then do more so in like a wave structure where you take the next step that will, again, fit your interests, supplement what you've done so far, and then you still will end up in a place that you're happy with. It may not be the same place you actually planned for, but it's not a wrong step. And that's something that I personally used, which is happenstance learning theory. I didn't use it per se to decide on my own choices, but I think it's something that's really useful. And like realizing the structure behind our own choices has really helped me navigate how I decided to actually leave. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this theory, but essentially it says that in life, we may have different goals, and sometimes we do have a very specific goal, sometimes we don't, but there are different ways in which you can plan your career, in which you either, you take this tunnel vision like approach, you know where you want to get, or you essentially focus on like the shorter term goals, you know what interests you, and you go from there. And you essentially keep learning through your own experiences and then readjusting later to get to where you want to be. And it is this new opportunity feedback, and then actually getting comfortable with the uncertainty that I think is really key here. And this is the reason I've put on this slide. Getting used to uncertainty is tricky. As a doctor, or in most traditional career paths, actually, uncertainty is something that we get taught to avoid. Uncertainty is something that we, like in medicine, at least we don't like. Of course, there's uncertainty everywhere. We don't know if a patient is going to get better or not, but we do everything to de-risk that form of a situation. And actually, if we think about careers, that's not necessarily a good thing. Having some form of uncertainty, if anything, I think can be very positive. And if you're open to different options, can be very validating and actually help you grow more. So I just input here some of the learnings from this theory. This is a theory by Krumboltz, and yeah, these were some of his learnings in terms of the theory. I'll just point out to a few asterisks here. I think it's quite important. So I think what this theory really shows, and that's something that I have learned myself for thinking about uncertainty, is you really have to remain open-minded and adaptable. In my case, as a doctor, leaving medicine, everyone will tell you, almost everyone, not to do it because you've invested so much time. And actually, you don't know what's going to happen. You're leaving a stable career, theoretically, for something that you don't know if you will earn money, you will be successful, and so on. Remaining open-minded, I think, is really important. There are no right or wrong choices here. If anything, take a chance. It's okay, but you have to have a plan. Being aware of external and internal obstacles is also really important, which is something that I would love to asterisk here. So by external and internal obstacles, what we mean is things that we can control and cannot control. So external obstacles, for instance, would be, I don't know, you want to become an eye surgeon, but you do not have steady hands. And there's no way you can learn to have like super steady hands. Like that's an external obstacle. I would argue you really shouldn't become an eye surgeon because you have to be like so precise with your movements. So being aware of your own limitations or even maybe unique talents as well, on the contrary, is really important because it can really highlight to you how to navigate this new pathway and what can work, what cannot work. There are ways you can mitigate obstacles and actually you can use it to your own advantage. Personally, for instance, with my own career choices, when I was thinking about leaving medicine, some of the obstacles that I faced is one, how do I actually start a company? And, I had an option of just perhaps leaving fully medicine and just saying, okay, fine, I'm going to start at day zero. I'm going to start a company now, move to Dubai or move to the Middle East, maybe even start in London and just fully leave anything. And, I could build a network, decide to, approach investors and just go from there. But actually, this will be quite difficult. You're coming to a completely new environment. I mean, I came to Saudi Arabia, which is a very different place to London. There are many cultural factors as well as the general structural factors that I wouldn't have been aware of. These are obstacles that I could navigate through actually joining a program instead, which is what I did. So this, for instance, helped me to better understand how to navigate in a new environment. That's one, build a network better, and actually succeed in this market, which I would say can be very difficult unless you do the right things. There are many, like I can give you many examples of things that I've done that maybe were not right, and then I learned later. But these are things that you can mitigate if you plan ahead. Taking a risk is also really important. And this is, I think, particularly true when you think about dealing with uncertainty. If you do not take a risk, your life will never become uncertain. And your chances of success are massively lower if you have like some big goal that's, very different to what you're doing now. Not everyone has to have that kind of a goal, and that's all right. But if you do, you have to get uncomfortable, and you have to allow those like unplanned events, unplanned choices to come to you. And you have to really allow yourself to make mistakes, because you probably will make mistakes, but it's all right. Now, what does this really look like in practice? So being open to options, wanting to actually take action rather than just reflecting and thinking is really important, but you still have to reflect. So from my own experiences, like being able to really focus on your own strengths, learn from what you've done, how you can do things better, and then improve is really important. And same with relationship building. I think navigating uncertainty on your own is possible, but it's really tricky. And if you're doing it alone, please reach out, because I think it's a very difficult thing to do. It's possible, but it's going to take you much longer to actually figure out the right pathway. And personally, since leaving medicine to pursue entrepreneurship, I have really capitalized on actually like building the network. You need to be able to learn from the advice of others, and people are generally very open. So I'm sure whatever decisions you're planning to make, people will be very happy to help you. Now, thinking about the choices, I would say the best way to approach that, something what I've done, is small experiments. So you don't have to fully commit to choosing an uncertain pathway without actually trialing it first. So things that I, for instance, have done before making this decision is doing an internship with a HealthTech company, where I did sales and worked closely with CEO and founders associate. And this really helped me to, one, see, do I like the startup environment? Two, is this something that I can see myself doing in the future? And then three, also really narrow down the skills that I'm looking, one, to grow, but two, also the goals that I have in the long term. And this really made me realize that the things that I was chasing in the short term at that time, which is like trying to, build those like immediate skills, wasn't what I was looking for in the long run. Which in the long run, I want to have this larger impact. I wanted to really improve things for people. But also from the business side, actually be able to, start things from the ground, be able to build a company. These are very different skills. And yes, you can get there in many ways, but the path to becoming a founder versus the path to, building a small part of a startup are very different. So I would say small experiments are great. And internships are a very good way to do it. Two, most decisions are reversible. And I think it's super important to realize with medicine, even if you leave, you will be able to come back. There are ways. So that's something I will have in mind. It's a great thing. And free, fast feedback. So something that I would say is a great thing, and that's something I've done, is I have spoken to a lot of people before actually making this move, and chatting to people to understand better if this is something that is viable long term, and is my actually thinking process right? Because sometimes we end up being in a bubble and we don't even realize it. So I think that's really important. Now, this is something I really want to touch upon, which is that it's really important to also realize the identity we carry. And this again ties to specifically like traditional career paths. It's very easy to associate your identity with what you're doing. And this is very true in medicine. You spend so long to become a doctor, but you only identify as a doctor. And this is something we're really, guilty of. You associate your identity with everything that you do at work. And letting go of that is not a wrong thing. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's a failure. Lastly, things that I really wish I knew before making this decision is that you don't really need a defined plan. But I was just saying that there's this really, really good book that I would recommend to everyone. I haven't unfortunately included a picture here, but it's called The Pathless Path. And it talks about the journey of this American guy who ended up leaving his very stable corporate job where he was very senior at that point, and he pursued entrepreneurship, moved to like Southeast Asia. Now I think he's living in Taiwan. Amazing book, like 10 out of 10. I would read it again. And this is actually one of the few things I would say has really pushed me towards eventually leaving medicine. So if you're also thinking about pursuing like a, non-traditional pathway, I would say 100% have a read. And fun fact, Ali Abdal, which some of you may know, has also recommended this book. And he also said it pushed him to actually leave medicine to just focus fully on YouTube. So amazing book, amazing resource. And yeah, very, very useful. I think this is everything that I've got. I hope this was useful. Please do ask me any questions because I do realize I didn't touch a lot upon what I have done actually in the Middle East. But yeah, happy to take any questions or offer insights. Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much for that insight. If you have any questions and if you're comfortable, feel free to type in the chat, or I would encourage you also to come on camera and ask questions. But I have a question for you. Like, what is it like navigating through this entrepreneurship space? Because I know you're doing medicine, and then, like you said, you pretty much went out of your comfort zone. So what was that like for you? Like, was it, I assume it,
Oh,
yeah, was it
yeah.
challenging, and what kind of things were you facing when you were doing that?
I would say it's, yeah, very good question. Thank you so much. It's leaving medicine to pursue something non-traditional is one challenge. Becoming an entrepreneur is a different form of a challenge on a different level. Because in a way, when you leave a traditional pathway, you leave it, it's done. You know that you're pursuing a different pathway. But actually, as an entrepreneur, you're starting something from zero. So there are quite often no directions whatsoever as to which way you have to go, what kind of steps should you take to actually go from zero to one. So to give you some insight, so I'm working currently on a health tech solution for the Middle East, specifically looking at women's health. And the things that I'm looking at, they don't really exist in the region. So, for instance, for myself, like I will have to figure out one, how does the market look like? I have to identify everything from the competitors, the regulations, the way people interact with the healthcare systems, the numbers, the statistics are quite often not there. The regulations may be missing. A lot of the regulations that are already there, but because, for instance, Middle East is developing really fast, things are changing. So actually, you are working with uncertainty every single day. So you have to be very, very flexible and very, very open-minded to the fact that you may plan for something and you may have actually prepared for it, but actually by the time you get there, things may change. So that's something that I found it difficult, I would say. It's exciting, but it's also, I would say, really difficult mentally, more so than physically, because you might be in best prepared self, but still you may not be able to fully understand things. You have to uncover them themselves. So I would say that's something that's really challenging if you do want to start your own company. I think if you're in like a developed market, it's much easier from this perspective because quite often the regulations and everything are there. But this will be true always if you're starting something, because unless you are just reinventing the wheel, in which I would say maybe have a look again, because there's always a case like, what are you trying to build in a company? If you're building something completely new, you will be faced with uncertainty 24/7. So yeah, so I found it challenging, but I would say it's a good thing. It is a good thing, but you have to like this. It's not a comfortable feeling initially.
No, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you so much for that insight. Now said, great work, great advice, great talk. Thank you. And Tano said, the question is, did your medical training shape the way you approach entrepreneurship?
Good question. I would say yes and no. The reason I'm saying this, it has helped me a lot in terms of the skills that I have developed. So as a doctor, the skills that we learn are quite often actually not defined in the same way as you would typically in a tradition, like corporate side of things. But these are still the same skill sets. So for instance, we do prioritization on everyday basis. We do a lot of like logical reasoning. We will do like stakeholder management, but actually this is not stakeholder management in the medical world. We work with different doctors and physicians, physiotherapists, nurses, and so on. So there are all sorts of skills that we have acquired, but actually, even though they're translatable, it can be quite difficult to realize it early. So I would say, yes, it has definitely helped me. It has made it very, very much, I would say, easier to actually work under stress, because like nothing will compare ever to your patient being unwell, I would say. But also, I would say some of the skills you gain in medicine are skills you have to unlearn. And actually, that is something that's quite often said in entrepreneurship, which is that some of the skills doctors acquire, for instance, like being over obsessed with being perfect, is not something that's particularly desired, because it will slow you down as an entrepreneur and it will make it more difficult for you to actually start a company. Like, especially in the early stages, you cannot have everything perfect. There's no way, one. And two, there's also no time. You have to move fast. If you're trying to really polish that specific report beyond like the required amount, like there's no point. These things will change. So I would say, yes, there's some things that you really have to develop later, but overall, most of the skills, they're fully translatable. You just have to be aware of the things that you've learned.
And just to add on to this question, I was wondering if when you were training or when you were working in the NHS, was that the point where you saw this problem that you were trying to tackle?
I would say I did see it a bit, but not as much. I think it's
See.
you can see a lot of problems the moment you actually step outside of medicine. So there are two ways you can uncover problems to build a startup for. One is, and this is the better way, by far is definitely better, is when you see a problem in real life and you say, okay, I've seen it this many times. Let's build something to solve this. And the problem that I'm building for, I have seen it before, but of course it's a different setting. So it's very difficult for you, I would say, to fully translate it, because it may not be true here. Fortunately, it's the same case. But yeah. And the second way you can uncover problems is through doing market research and actually speaking to patients, speaking to clinics, in my case, hospitals. So the more conversations you have, you quite often actually can realize that the one thing that you thought was a problem for someone is not as big of a problem as something else. So actually, through my time with Antler, I was actually initially working on a completely different idea. And when we were working on that, we were having so many conversations with hospitals and doctors. We uncovered like dozens of different problems through those conversations. And a lot of them were also very good ideas to solve. So yeah, I would say just stay open-minded. There are problems everywhere, less solutions.
I see. Keep the questions coming. You have talked about a lot about Antler. Can you let us know what it is?
Oh my gosh, yes, I'm sorry. I just realized I actually
No
didn't
worries.
explain that. You're right. So Antler is a venture capital firm. They were started actually 8 years ago in Singapore by Magnus, and there were three other co-founders. Um, so the venture capital firm that invests primarily in early stage founders from day zero. So they'll focus on people who have just started working on the startup idea or want to start a company. They offer programs where you essentially can join for 10 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks. You get mentorship, you can connect with other people who also want to start a company, and then select number of people end up getting an investment at the end. And yeah, it's one of the options, but it's a really good program. If you are considering, very happy to answer any questions. They do have locations all over the world. So there's one in London, there's one on like every continent. For the Middle East, there's only one, which is Dubai and Riyadh. But it's a great program.
Awesome. Thank you. Another question from Bethany. What surprised you most about transition from clinical environment to startup culture?
Good question. I would say, in terms of surprises, I think the pace at which you have to like adapt is something that surprised me initially, and how resourceful you have to be. Like you have to really go out of your way to find ways to make something work. So just to give you an example, so we were working on an idea before, which was around weight loss. This was one of our ideas. We validated a few ideas prior during the program, and this was one of the ideas. So to truly validate if this is a problem or not, it's difficult. I mean, you're an early stage startup. How are you going to afford, selling advertising? It's a very expensive thing. So to be really resourceful, for instance, we went to a local supermarket. We managed to speak to the manager. They kindly agreed for us to set up a stall there and speak with people. You really have to go out of your way. And that's something I had to, just really learn on the go, that this is something we came up with in one day. We printed posters, we got a scale, we got banners, and we just went to a supermarket and like suddenly spent like 8 hours there from 2 p.m. onwards, just speaking to people. So you really have to be comfortable with suddenly making those choices and getting out of your comfort zone. So I would say this was the most surprising thing, but it's also a positive thing. It's definitely something that I am really happy with, and it has really helped me also really get out of my comfort zone. It's great.
Thank you. We have another question from Mohammed. They said, interesting talk. What are some things you wish you had learned more about during your medical studies or while working as a doctor before starting your company? For example, is it research or any other skills?
Good question. I guess it really depends on the medical school. So I don't know if like my experiences would really be translatable to other places. But personally, with King's and Imperial, the courses are very theory heavy or clinical skills heavy, depending on the part of medical school. So something that I really wished we understood better during medical school is how the healthcare systems work. Because even though I do think this is not needed on like on a detailed level, we were never really explained the basic structure. So for instance, if you're in the UK, there's certain ways in which GPs, for instance, get funded or hospitals get funded. And in hospitals, maybe it doesn't matter as much because there's no billing, no performance measures quite often that you have to chase on a daily basis. If you're a GP, like a family physician in the UK, you do. And this will impact your work later. And this is something you will learn later. And I did learn about this, but it wasn't through direct learning at the university. So I wish that's something I learned, because I think this would have helped me better understand things on a macro level. But also, I don't think this is something that particularly would impact your success in building a company. I think to start a company, you have to, in the first place, be happy to take a risk and to be open-minded. And these are the two key things that you have. Without that, it's going to be difficult.
Thank you for that insight. Another question from Dia. What would you recommend high school students do before they start medical schools to better prepare for the rigor?
Good question. So if you're just going to medical school now, congrats and good luck. I really hope that it goes well, because it is a long journey, but it's definitely worth it, and it's super interesting. So I really hope you have the best time. In terms of preparing, I wouldn't do anything before going to medical school, because once you get there, it's going to be really busy and really intense. So just enjoy the time. But if you do really want to do anything prior, I would say just plan ahead in terms of like the extracurriculars maybe you want to do if you're moving to a new city. Like once you get to medical school, it will be busy enough. So I really wouldn't recommend doing anything extra. Certainly with even preparing for like the exams, I wouldn't do it unless maybe you're in the US. That's a different scenario because the medical school is 4 years. So it's more competitive and there's more content. In that case, maybe I would start revising, but otherwise, no.
I think there's a question in the previous talk, but I think that could apply to you. So, like, if there's someone, let's say in high school or maybe even undergrad, who's thinking of doing medicine, what do you think they should know? How do they research in advance to know if that would be for them to do medicine?
No, that's a really good question. I think it's a tricky question because on one hand, you can do all the research and do clinical work experiences, but then you will never be 100% sure unless you actually start working. And I think that's something that like everyone should have in mind when they enter medical school. Like, I mean, make yourself as sure as possible, but things may change. And that's something that happened with me, and it's okay, things happen. But things that I would do to know that I want to enter medical school is one, do a lot of research. So understand how a work of a doctor looks like later, the kind of responsibilities you will have, the hours you will work. And yes, there are different specialties. So have a look into how the work of a specialist looks like, be it a surgeon, a GP, I don't know, a dermatologist, and just be aware that like you have to be comfortable with more than one specialty in a way, because these are competitive options. So like you need to, essentially understand that you can do everything that you want to do, but sometimes it may be tricky to have like a very specific career pathway. So you need to love medicine as a whole, I would say. But there are exceptions. So, if you're 100% sure you want to do dermatology, please go for it, because, this passion and drive will motivate you. So that's all great. So research is one. Speak to doctors, really learn from their own experiences. And then three, do clinical work experience. So if you're able to, which I appreciate can be quite tricky, go to hospitals and do some attachments with them as an observer to really see how things work. So that would include like doing the mundane things, like, trying to go on a ward round with doctors, sitting in a clinic, so on. It is difficult to organize, but if you do, it will really show you if you like it. It's a career that once you specialize, you will do the same thing over and over again for like 15 years. So it's better to like it. But yeah, I would say these are the key things. To prepare otherwise, I mean, all sorts of extracurricular things are great. Prizes, conferences, if there are any that you can attend, that's also great. Voluntary work, but that won't tell you about medicine. That will just make your application look better.
Great, thank you so much for that insight. And there's one more question respecting time. This would be the last question, or maybe we'll entertain just one more question after this. Oh, I think this question sort of speaks to what you're saying, which is to ask about doctor's experience. And since you're a medical doctor yourself, this is a nice question. So the question is, could you share what was your day-to-day like when you were studying medicine from year 1 to year 6, and also when you were working in the NHS? What did you like? What did you not like? And actually, perhaps you can also talk about your specialty and
Yeah.
what did you do?
Yeah. Sounds good. I'll be very honest. I like being honest because I think a lot of people will sugarcoat. Medicine is great and I loved it. It was really interesting. I loved my years 1 to 2, which were pure theory. It was a lot of, just learning about like the actual physiology, anatomy, and so on. That was great. Clinical attachment started from year 3. It was great. I liked it as well, but it can be tough. I'll say it can be really tough. And actually, it takes you a while initially to adjust. And from speaking to medical students, it's something that you learn. Like you see a lot of sadness. A lot of the things you see are not positive things. You're literally with someone probably in like the worst day of their life. So it's something that will impact you emotionally, probably one way or the other. And you will get used to it. You will either become desensitized or you will learn to compartmentalize your feelings, which is all right. But I think that's something just to bear in mind. So I personally, I found it quite tough initially, and especially when I started working as a doctor, that was really, really tough. Because you see a lot of things that are really sad. But it's okay. I got used to it. In terms of the day-to-day life, I would say it really depends on your medical school. There's a lot of work, and that will mean you having to study probably all days of the week to some extent. Some people have to study more, some people have to study less. Before exams, you'll study nonstop. So I think this is really personal, but there's a lot of work. So it's a tough course. But in terms of the theory, it's not as difficult as people make it out to be. Of course, it's difficult. There's a lot of content, but it's difficult because of the amount of content, not the complexity. It's things you have to memorize more so. In terms of working as a doctor, I worked across most specialties. So the only specialty I didn't do directly is obs and gynae, obstetrics and gynecology, but I still worked with the team, just from a different setting. I was working with neonatal team. So I would actually attend deliveries to see the babies. But I worked as a junior doctor in the NHS, resident doctor now. Most specialties, then I locumed which means I was employed on a like ad hoc basis. But it was basically full-time for me. So I had to pick which specialties I wanted to work with, which meant that I've seen the all sides of medicine. And the hours are, I would say, not great. Depends on the country, but you will work a lot. I certainly did end up working a lot. There's a lot of night shifts. That's something you have to prepare for. A lot of out-of-hours work. You do end up spending a lot of time in the hospital. The work itself is great. It's super satisfying when you can see a patient get better, but it's also equally heartbreaking if they don't. So it can be mentally very challenging, but also there's the other side of things is the system pressures. So that's something I did not like when I was working, because the care will be dictated quite often by the things you have or the things you cannot provide. And unfortunately, say for instance, if there are like winter pressures, which you always see all over the news, it is difficult because suddenly you have a lot of patients and then you have to, you have to give your best, but you only have so little time. So I would say that that's the things I didn't enjoy personally. But yeah, I could go on and on about these topics. I don't want to take up too long.
Yep.
If there are more questions, happy to answer.
Okay, this will be the last question for you, Wiktoria, and thank you so much for your time. Question from Dia is, does the college you go in the UK affect the kind of exposure you get?
Yes and no. I think, how to say this? So every medical school will provide you with exposure. And ultimately, it is what you take out of it. So no matter the medical school you go to, the learning you get will be influenced by how much work you put in, whether you go to placement, how you engage, and so on. That being said, specific universities have connections to different hospitals. So if you're, for instance, in central London, like I was at King's, then we had a major trauma center attached to us. So yes, you'll be able to see those like really specialist cases. It's great. Is it really needed when you're a medical student? Maybe, maybe not, because at this point you're still learning. It's really difficult to actually sometimes comprehend like the science behind what you're seeing in real life. So it can be tricky. I would say it's still a great experience, and I wouldn't say, it's a bad thing, but I wouldn't say it's always a positive when you're learning. But yes, it will influence the exposure you get, but not to the extent that I would worry about it. It depends what you want to get out of it. Of course, if you have a very specific interest and there's this one particular place you really want to be in, makes sense. But there are other ways you can have an attachment at a hospital. And even going to a specific university doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to later have some exposure somewhere else.
Okay, Wiktoria, thank you so much. That'll be the last question for you. It means a lot for you to come to our session, and thank you also the audience for your engaging questions. I hope you guys are having a great time. So thank you again, Wiktoria. Please give her a round of applause, maybe through reactions or chat, and that'll be great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Wiktoria. Okay, so for our next session, and I know that many of you are really looking forward to hearing from Dr. Dhruv Darji, who would be talking about his journey from Zambia to England. He's also a medical doctor, but unfortunately, he won't be able to join us today due to his severe internet connectivity issues in his current location. But that said, this is not a goodbye. Dr. Dhruv Darji has kindly agreed to host a dedicated talk with us sometime next year, where we will be able to fully engage with his work and his journey. So I encourage you to, stay connected on Instagram, LinkedIn, and you can also join our mailing list so we can email you when this new talk will be hosted. It will be around this time, hopefully. And in this mailing list and through our social media, we'll be sharing updates, future events on the Catalyst Dialogue series and many other research workshops that we have, and also future opportunities to continue these important ongoing conversations about research, healthcare, leadership, science, and so on. So thank you again, everyone. And Wiktoria has also put her LinkedIn on the chat, so feel free to connect with her. And yeah, Niall has also put his LinkedIn and Instagram on the chat. Okay. So thank you, everyone. The session will end today, and I really appreciate all of you coming to the session. Okay, see you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Clematis Research Empowerment Hub. Empowering research for everyone.